The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Automatic Fantasy. Go up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Now the promo code SGPN to claim a special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $50 in bonus cash. Automatic Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best dad-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today. Go to sportscampodcast.com/rhythm, sportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently late Sunday night, roughly 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on June 30th. I'm Rosso with Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode because it is time to get through Wimbledon again, this time for the women's side. We did the men's tournament about a day ago. Now it's time to get into the women's tournament. Should be a lot of fun based on how these events have unfolded over the last couple of years. But point is, before we get into any of that, don't exactly have any recaps to do for the lock and dog because we ended up recapping our picks from the final in the men's tournaments in the men's Wimbledon episode. So no extra bonus picks, but a reminder, since we are doing the first round preview and the outrights for the women's as well, that means that we have two lock and dog picks because we have a lock and dog in this episode and we have a lock and dog from the men's episode from yesterday. So we have bonus picks, I guess, if that's how you want to phrase it, for the first round of Wimbledon. So looking forward to breaking down the tournament once again and going through the actual first round picks at the end of the show with the lock and dog segment. Now, before we get into any of the actual recap of this weekend's action on the women's side, do want to remind you once again that we have a couple of very, very solid options to buy on the SGPN merch store. We have the T-shirts, we have the sweatshirts, and we have the mugs. So if you do want to get yourself some merchandise for the Tennis Gambling Podcast, you can do so to show your support. Plus, a reminder that if you are consuming the podcast either on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple, you can still show your support by either liking and subscribing on YouTube or by rating and reviewing the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So no matter how you consume the podcast, leave some feedback. Let me know if you enjoy the show, and that way we know if we need to improve it or not. Either way, point is that's going to take care of the housekeeping. Now, I said I was going to recap what happened over the weekend. There were two separate women's events that I have to recap, which was in Bad Homburg and in Eastbourne. So I'll go through the final for both events. I'm not going to actually dive all the way into the events. Point is, though, you had a pretty surprising winner in Germany, as you saw the Russian woman by the name of Schneider, who got the job done. She ended up beating Vekic in 3 sets. Impressive showing by her. I know that she is extremely young, so I believe that's her first ever ATP title. It's definitely her first ever WTA title. Her first ever 500, and she was able to make a very, very impressive run because she went through Kerber, Yastremska, Badoza, Navarro, and Vekic, and she was, I believe, a dog in that final. I think. So yeah, she was plus 120. So she was kind of a dog every step of the way, got the job done, and pulled it off. So nice job by her. And I looked it up. Schneider is exactly 20 years old. So once again, she can be a very solid grass player moving forward. Keep an eye out for her. We had a relative unknown win a WTA 500, which is pretty cool. Then for the other event in Eastbourne, you had Kasatkina, who ended up beating Fernandez. Not exactly as shocking because Kasatkina is ranked 14th in the world. So not as, I'd say, out of nowhere as Schneider was. Schneider, by comparison, by the way, is ranked 47th. So not an insane long shot, but based on the betting odds, definitely not somebody who's expected to win the event. Now, as for Kasatkina, the final is a lot more simple than the Schneider one because Kasatkina kind of just buried Layla as Fernandez had nothing to offer, ended up winning 7 games in the match, and you saw Kasatkina win 6-3, 6-4. Kind of an intense end to the match as you ended up seeing Kasatkina up a break on multiple occasions in the second set, but eventually closed it out. She ended up fighting off a break point in the 4-4 game, got the hold, and then broke again, I should say, to win the second set. So one pretty entertaining long shot win, and then you had one player in the top 15 who won a WTA title, but that's going to wrap up the actual 500 events from this past weekend, and those events did end on Saturday. Now it's time to get into the actual preview for Wimbledon. So we're going to start off going through the previous winners of the event. Starting off with the recent winners, you have had a couple of long shots win over the years, so this might be a fun tournament to gamble and to potentially pick a long shot to get the job done because it's happened for the last 2 years. So Vondrousova got the job done against Jabeur last year. She was about 150 to 1. And then Rybakina got the job done against Jabeur 2 years ago. I think she was also like 100 to 1. And then you saw Barty, who ended up beating Pliskova a couple years ago. Barty, we know, was top 3 in the world pretty much for the last couple years of her career. And then she eventually retired. And you're looking at Vondrousova, who has been a solid player, but definitely had no, I'd say, well-known skill set on. She just wasn't that known for grass skills, and she ended up getting the job done in Wimbledon. And Rybakina is good on grass. People just didn't really know who she was, and then she turned out to be a top 3 player in the world. So the point is, you can maybe find some, I'd say, players with upside in the event, players who might soon enter the top 10, top 5, and take them now when the lines might be a bit big. And recently, they have been able to make some deep runs. But back-to-back years where basically somebody who was 100 to 1 or bigger ended up winning the event is kind of absurd. And that might be something that's worth talking about when we get into the outrights once again. Because if you are trying to predict which, I'd say, favorite out of the women are going to actually show up and win the event, good luck. Because so far in the last couple of years, none of the top women have actually stepped up and won Wimbledon. So we'll see what happens, but I think it should be a fun tournament, should be interesting, and if the recent winner list is any indication of what we're going to be expecting to see this year in Wimbledon, expect chaos. That's going to be my brief, I'd say, summary of the point I was trying to make. Point is, though, getting into the actual quarters. So starting off with the first quarter, I'm going to read off the odds first, then I'll get into the actual picks for each quarter, then I'll do the outrights to win the event. Starting off with the first quarter, this is the Swiatek quarter. You have minus 115. You have Vondrousova, the defending champion, at 7 to 1. You have Collins at 7 to 1. You have Ostapenko at 11 to 1. You have Haddad Maia at 12 to 1. You have Kudermetova at 16 to 1. Spoiler, not taking her. She's been abysmal all year long. You have Siniakova at 20 to 1. You have Garcia 20 to 1. I'm trying to think if there's any other names worth talking about. You have Kennan at 40 to 1. That's basically it. I don't really expect many super long shots to actually win the quarter. So for the first quarter, it's going to be a bit tricky because Swiatek's been underwhelming in Wimbledon for her own standards. But she made the quarters last year. She has gotten better on grass. I'm not saying that she is going to be able to immediately run through the entire quarter. She might drop a couple sets, but I think that at the end of the day, Swiatek is actually in a pretty decent quarter for her to get the job done. Vondrousova was a player who I know that we like, but Swiatek's owned her in their respective careers. Collins has had a good year. She's never really been good on grass. Her grass resume has been relatively abysmal, especially in Wimbledon in her career, so I don't expect Collins to do much. Ostapenko's too much of a head case for me. I thought Maia has been underwhelming for the last couple months. I mentioned Kudermetova before, not interested. So not really looking for anybody, or not really finding anybody that intrigues me as a long shot. Kennan, you could argue, maybe, but I don't see that happening, and I believe that she's actually against Iga in the first round, so definitely not the person you want to be taking. It's not a great quarter for anybody of I'd say, long shot potential, in my opinion. Kerber's at 80 to 1. She's, of course, talented, but has not really been great this year either. I'm going to go with Iga. I know that Iga hasn't exactly made a semi before here in Wimbledon, but she made the quarters last year. We saw how dominant she was on clay. I know she did not play any of the grass tune-up events leading up to the this event, but I think you're looking at Swiatek shopping around. I mentioned before that the odds were minus 115. If you go to BetMGM, I believe the odds are plus 115. So if you want to give me plus 115 on Swiatek, I'm going to take it, just simply put. I think Swiatek's going to be able to get the job done in this one. I'm going to read off the quarter odds, by the way. The default odds I'm using are going to be DraftKings, but pretty much every book now has quarter odds. So I'm going to try to remember, I forgot to write it down, which book has which odds, but I believe plus 115 for Swiatek was, I want to say that was BetMGM. I think. I'm trying to think if it was Bet Rivers. I don't think it was. I think it was plus 115 on BetMGM, so I'm going to go with that. Point is, I think that plus 115 is good prices, so I'm going to go with that as my only choice for the first quarter. Thought about Garcia, who I think has talent and a lot of firepower that can translate well to grass. I just don't think she'd get the job done if she was forced to go up against Iga. And looking at the path, Blinkova in the first round is not exactly an ideal matchup. I think Blinkova has some talent, so I'm not going to bother. Just give me Iga by herself in the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter. I'm telling you, it's going to get a bit more chaotic. First quarter was extremely chalky, and we're going to get a little bit more intense here in the second quarter. So this is going to be the Rybakina quarter. Once again, a reminder, shop your lines because there are a lot of different books with quarter odds, so keep that in mind. Looking at the second quarter, you have Rybakina at plus 130. You have Jabeur, the two-time runner-up, the last two times, actually, the back-to-back runner-up at 3-1. You have Pegula at 450. You have Kalinskaya at 11-1. You have Boulder at 12-1. Layla at 13-1, fresh off of the title loss in Eastbourne. You have Svitolina at 16-1. You have Samsonova at 18-1. Wozniacki at 30-1. Buskova at 30-1. Parks, who went through qualifying, but has been really good lately, at 30-1. You have pretty much nobody else I really think that's worth talking about. So if you want to go for like the home country person, you can get Harrison Dart at 150-1. Not going to be me. I think her second serve is too abysmal. Anyway, I said before that you should shop around because there are a lot of different books that have quarter odds. Rybakina, I said, was plus 130. Can interest you in plus 175. Now, this I remember was on BetMGM, so they do have this at 175. BetMGM has been kind of disrespectful towards Rybakina for the last couple of events. I remember that they had a pretty wide disparity between themselves and the rest of the market for the French Open for Rybakina's quarters, and ironically, she ended up losing in the quarter. So she didn't even win her respective quarter. But the point is, BetMGM has been kind of disrespectful or I should say more skeptical towards Rybakina in the last couple of Grand Slams based on the odds. But I think 175 makes sense. She is a former champion, solid overall firepower, and I do think that her talent translates well to grass. So I am going to give her out, but unlike the first quarter, I'm also going to take a couple of other options because Rybakina has not been too reliable so far this year. I feel like that she has been very good in some matches, and she looks like she's going to potentially make it to the Grand Slam final. And then it seems like something always goes wrong around the quarterfinals, and she just falls on her face. So I'm not going to go all in on Rybakina, but I think 175 is worth it and intriguing enough of a price for me to pull the trigger. Now, for my second pick, I am going to go Pegula at 5-1. I think Pegula's actually got a shot to win the whole thing. Now, Pegula has been in very good form so far in the grass season. She's a very solid player, and I do think with that being the case, she definitely has the talent to get it done. Now, she's currently ranked 5th in the world. You might remember that she actually won the title in Berlin and did not drop a single I'm trying to remember what I was going to... No, she did drop a couple of sets in there. Point is, though, she beat Vekic in the first round. Still a solid win. Beat Siniakova in 3, beat Goff in straight sets, and then beat Kalinskaya in 3. I believe she finished the Goff match and beat Kalinskaya on the same day. So I think Pegula on grass is pretty underrated, and I do think that she is a very solid player. Give me Pegula at 5-1. I think that she has the ability and the talent to potentially beat Rybakina if they would go head-to-head. And I think her draw is actually quite favorable to go through her actual draw. Sorry, just quickly trying to find her on the bracket. Kruger in the first round's fine. Then either Wang or Tomova. I think she should be able to win that one. Then either Boulder, Maria, Dart, or Bai. Probably Boulder. Boulder could be tricky because I know that she's also pretty good on grass, but I do think that Pegula is better. I think Pegula, though, really has the makings of a Grand Slam champion. And I feel like if we're talking about players who might, I don't want to say burst onto the scene because she's already ranked top 5 in the world. But if we're talking about Wimbledon and how players have been able to win their first Grand Slam titles for the last couple of times this event's been held, I think Pegula actually checks those boxes. So give me Pegula at 5-1. Might mention her again later in the show, but I think 5-1's intriguing. So I'm going to go with her at that price. You're getting a top 5 player in the world at 5-1. That's a pretty solid deal in my book, so give me Pegula at 5-1. My last choice is going to be the bit of a longer shot, but I do think that she is capable of having a good run on grass, and I think she's capable of actually upsetting some players based on her, I'd say, mental toughness. I'm going to go Fernandez at 17-1. We remember that she did lose in the U.S. Open final to Raducanu a couple of years ago, but we saw her make the final in Eastbourne. I believe it was Eastbourne. I'm drawing a blank. But the point is she ended up losing in Eastbourne, I believe, in the final. So we know that she can make deep runs on grass. And I think with that being the case and with her overall toughness, she's not afraid of 3 sets. I know that she's going to go down swinging. And I do think if any player is having an off night, Fernandez is probably not the player you want to see because Fernandez is going to definitely make you work for your wins. And I think that at 17-1, she can be a solid option. If she goes up against Rybakina in a hypothetical, of course, Rybakina will be favored, but we know that Rybakina's unforced error count can be a bit high at times, and Fernandez can be a pretty underrated pusher forcing players to make mistakes and hit the ball past her. So I think Fernandez can make a respectable showing here, and I think 17-1 is a pretty good price. I'm not going to slam the 17-1, but I do think that it's worth something just based on the price point. I think this one I saw on FanDuel at 17-1. Anyway, so once again, the second quarter picks, I'm going to go with Rybakina at 175. I'm going to go with Pegula at 5-1, and I am going to go with Fernandez at 17-1. Moving on to the third quarter. This is the Sabalenka quarter. So for this one, you have Sabalenka as a pretty decent favorite, -120. You have Andreeva at +650, fresh off of the French Open semifinal appearance, in which she actually beat Sabalenka in the quarters. You have Raducanu at 750. You have Zhang at 10-1. You have Kasatkina at 14-1. Sakari, who's been a mess, not taking Sakari. I feel like it's obvious, but I'll just say it once again. She's been awful. I'm not going to bother with Sakari. You have Alexandrova at 16-1, Mukova 20-1. Good to see her back. She had a very solid showing in the French Open last year. Then looked pretty good in the U.S. Open. Then got injured, missed the entire year, and then came back right before Wimbledon. So I'm not sure how she's going to look. Fun matchup against Badoza in the first round. I'm not going to take her, but I'm happy to see Mukova healthy again. We'll see how she looks in the event. Maybe U.S. Open, I can consider her. But for this event, I can't. Not enough practice on grass. She played 3 matches, or she had 3 matches scheduled, and she only played 1 full match. So with that being the case, I don't exactly trust her stamina at this point, so I'm not going to go with her. Badoza 28-1, you have Vekic at 28-1. Vekic could be interesting. Not exactly a great draw, but she has given Sabalenka problems over the years. So maybe she can pull off an upset if she beats Sabalenka in, I believe, the second round. That's going to be it, though, for the outrights, or at least for the outright odds I'm going to read off, because I don't see anybody else that I think is going to win the quarter. So Sabalenka, once again, shop your lines -120. I found +105. I believe this was on Bet365. But I think +105 is too good to pass up on. She is a 2-time semifinalist here. We know that she has a lot of firepower, and I think that her game translates well to grass. So I am going to go Sabalenka at +105. Not interested at -120, but if you want to give me basically a coin flip at plus money on the odds of her making the semis or anybody else, I don't mind the coin flip. I think it's a good price. So give me +105 in this market for Sabalenka. The other choice, I'm only going to go with the second option. I am going to go with Zhang, who's been really good so far this year. We saw her make a deep run in the Australian Open. On grass, she's been fine so far this year. Has not been amazing, but she was able to beat Osaka a couple weeks ago. So I do know that she has the grass talent. I don't want to compare her to Sabalenka because it's disrespectful to Sabalenka, but she has a lot of firepower. And I do think her serve's underrated. So when her first serve lands, I do think she can win some free points that other players cannot win. She didn't really play many grass matches warming up for the event. Played in Berlin. Ended up beating Osaka, though, in 3 sets, like I said. I think 14-1 is a good price. We saw her make the final of a Grand Slam earlier in the year. She's a top 10 player in the world, and I think that overall her talent is undeniable. She's also really young. She's only 21, so the fact that she's already been this successful so far in her career tells me that there might be another gear to her game, another level for her to reach, and I do think that 14-1 is a good price. I'm not saying she would end up beating Sabalenka in a potential matchup, but she is on the other side of the quarter, so they would not have to face off until the quarterfinals. So an argument could be made that if Vekic does end up having Sabalenka's number once again, and you get complete Armageddon in that quarter, I think Zhang would have a decent shot of getting through. So I think Zhang at 14-1, it makes sense. Made a Grand Slam final, so I know that she's not going to be afraid of the moment, and I think that she is a pretty decent grass player based on what we saw over the 2 matches she played on grass in the warm-up stage for Wimbledon. Went 1-1, but beating Osaka. Osaka's still a solid grass player, so good win nonetheless. Give me Zhang at 14-1. That's going to be it for the third quarter. Moving on to the fourth quarter. Now, this is going to be the absolute chaos quarter. I'm just telling you right now, we are going with 2 long shots in the quarter. That's going to be the spoiler. Now, for the favorite, you have Goff at 150. You have Keys at 350. You have Osaka at 4-1. Paolini at 10-1. Paolini's hilarious, by the way, because I know she made the French Open final. I believe she's never won a match in Wimbledon. I think she's like 0-3 lifetime. So I'm obviously not taking Paolini in Wimbledon to make the quarterfinals or beyond, to make the semis. I don't think she's going to do anything in the event. So Paolini pass. I'll compare her to, for the sake of this, Casper Ruud in this case. I just think that you're looking at her pricing based on a reputation and based on recent form. The problem is that she's not good on grass at all. So not going to bother with Paolini. Makes sense, though. She's undersized, can't really serve, and I do think her game is better suited for clay, obviously, than for grass. So I'm going to skip Paolini. You have Schneider, fresh off of the title in Bad Homburg at 16-1. You have Azarenka at 18-1. You have Bianca. You have Andreescu at 18-1. Navarro at 20-1. You have Pliskova at 22-1, former finalist here. Noskova at 25-1. Stearns at 80-1. Sloane Stephens at 80-1. You get the point. So Goff, I'm not taking. I believe she's never made a quarter here, and I do think that Goff is always vulnerable to getting upset. She's been good recently, had an okay run in the French Open, but on grass has not exactly been as good as we thought she would be for the rest of her career. I remember that she ended up beating, I think it was Venus Williams, when she was extremely young, her first ever entry, and we thought she was going to be a phenom, and we thought, okay, she's got a lot of firepower, a powerful serve, that should translate well to Wimbledon. And it just really hasn't so far. She's been the most successful at the U.S. Open, winning a title, but she's been the most consistent at the French Open. And it just seems like the Wimbledon skill set has not been consistent enough for me to pick her to win this quarter, especially at plus 150. I need a bigger amount of success here. I know I mentioned Swiatek before, who's never made a semi, but at least she made a quarter. Goff hasn't even made a quarter yet. I can't take her at plus 150 to win the quarter. Keys I'm not going to take either. I think Keys definitely can get there, but I'm not sold on her at plus 350. I kind of wanted a bigger price on Keys. I've kind of considered Keys to be a Grand Slam choker over the years. That's why she's never won a Grand Slam title. And at 350, I need a bit more meat on the bone, personally. I think I need like 5-6-1 to take Keys, and as a result, I'm not going to take her. Now, for the third option, you have Osaka. Not taking her either. I think Osaka can have a good run here, but a fun fact, she's actually not participated in Wimbledon since pre-COVID. So she has not been at Wimbledon since about 2019. So I can't pick somebody who has not played in this venue in that many years to just come out and immediately make it semi. I can't pick that happening. 4-1's an insane price, by the way. So I'm not going to take her either. So as a result, with me tossing out the top 4 options in Goff because the price isn't right, Keys, who I think the price is too cheap on, Osaka, based on the lack of Wimbledon matches over the years and the price, and Paolini, who has no grass success at all in her career, you're going to see chaos, in my opinion, for the fourth quarter. So if you're picking somebody who can make the Cinderella run to a semi and maybe to continue the Cinderella title run streak, I think the fourth quarter might be intriguing. Now, I mentioned before that Schneider is at 16-1 and Azarenka is at 18-1. Those two are on DraftKings. Can I interest you? Both of these are on FanDuel. Azarenka at 25-1. I'll start there. 2-time semifinalist. She has a solid overall skill set for grass. I know she's older, but I still think she can make a decent run. I think that she's capable of upsetting some players, and if the serve is on, I think she can definitely make a deep run if the quarter totally blows up. So instead of the odds I mentioned, 25-1 on Azarenka. Now, I mentioned that Schneider was about 16-1 on DraftKings. Can I interest you in 42-1 on FanDuel? So give me the 42-1 on Schneider. I think she's a very talented player on grass. We saw her win a 500 title. She's still very young, so I think a lot of people might not be fully aware of how good she actually is. She also won the ladies. I'm trying to remember, is it the ladies or is it the girls Wimbledon? You know what I mean? The juniors Wimbledon. She won that a couple years ago. She won the title, so I do know that she can handle grass pretty well. Still relative unknown. I know she's off a title, but 42-1, I think, is a very good price. Now, the problem with Schneider is her first round match. It is against Pliskova, which is definitely not the easiest match in the world, but I do think with that being the case, and I actually should mention Schneider and Azarenka would play each other in the second round, but I do think that it is intriguing enough at the price points to take two players that I think can kind of weave their way through the quarters if everything goes according to plan. So with what I think is going to be an insane quarter that's completely up for grabs, featuring a Cinderella, give me two Cinderella shots, give me Azarenka as the veteran choice who has been successful in Wimbledon over her career to potentially make another run to the semi at 25-1. Schneider, though, at 42-1 is a tremendous price. So I'll go with that as my serious long shot in the quarter section. Give me Schneider at 42-1. So once again, before we officially move on to the outright picks for the event itself, I am going to go remind everybody what my outrights are. on what my quarter outrights are. So starting off with the first quarter, give me Swiatek by herself at a plus 115 in the first quarter. That's it. Second quarter, give me Rybakina at 175, give me Pegula at plus 500, and give me Fernandez at 17-1. For the third quarter, give me Sabalenka at plus 105, give me Zhang at 14-1. And the fourth quarter, the chaos quarter, give me Azarenka at 25-1, and give me Schneider at 42-1. That's going to the apology, Zhang. I'm not going to go with BB. I would have made a case for it, but she's been really bad in the grass events before Wimbledon. I know that she's one of your favorite players, but I can't do it. I don't trust her enough. I know that she has had a lot of Grand Slam success in the past, several years ago past, but recently she just doesn't have it, and she kind of is prone to self-destructing. So I really have a hard time of trusting her to actually make a deep run. I'm assuming you're going to be backing her because she's like your favorite player, but I can't do it. I don't trust her enough. I'd rather go with the value elsewhere. Anyway, that's it for the quarter odds, and now it's time for the outrights. But before we continue that, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Automatic Fantasy, because a reminder that the pick 8 is now live. Create entries up to 8 picks. Now go automatically double flex your entries. You can make it to 2 picks, and you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make, an extra ways to win, the excitement's higher than ever. And a reminder, you can win up to 325 times your original amount. You could also use specials and boosts on all flexed entries. I'll probably end up using every pick 8 entry moving forward involving Angel rebounds. Because Angel Reese is a phenomenal rebounder. As far as I'm concerned, she's female Moses Malone, and she goes higher on her rebounds in every game. I think she had 17 or 16 today. So, yeah, give me the higher on her rebounds in every game. A reminder as well that if you should end up signing up the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time bottles that offer up to $50 in bonus cash on our fantasy promo code SGPN. Also, a reminder about Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Of course, Circa contests have no rake. Circa Millions, pick 5 NFL teams ATS each week and compete for $6 million or survive the NFL Gauntlet with NFL Survivor to claim the $10 million prize. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com to save you $50 with promo code SGP. Don't have a trip planned for Las Vegas yet before football. Ultimate Contest Weekend's a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sportsbook in the world from August 22nd to August 24th. Speaking of Sean and Ryan, by the way, forgot to mention this before, a reminder that you should also check out their podcast, which is the SGP Stories. The latest episode of the SGP Stories podcast is out on Patreon, and the guys do a forensic file style deep dive on the Bobby Petrino motorcycle accident that cost him his job. Plus, make sure to check out the WNBA Gambling Podcast, as Terrell and Scott have started out red hot with their locks. As you cannot tell, that is also a show that Terrell and I do multiple times per week. So check out that podcast as well. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished the quarter breakdowns. Now it's time for the outright picks. So I'm going to go through the outright odds first. Starting off with the odds. Once again, I did shop around, so I encourage you to do the same. So many books have outrights. So once again, take the extra second, find a better price, and then if you find somebody you like, bet it. But don't blindly look at one book. You can definitely do better than that. There are more options. Find the best price for you. And once I explain the actual disparities between some of the lines, you'll understand why I'm encouraging everybody to shop their lines. So starting off, you have the favorite is Sabalenka at plus 320. You have Swiatek at 370. You have Rybakina at 650. You have Goff at 7-1. Jabeur, the two-time runner-up, at 14-1. You have Pegula at 18-1. Osaka's 20-1. You have Keys at 20-1. You have Andreeva at 30-1. Raducanu at 30-1. You have Collins at 50-1. Zhang at 50-1. Vondrousova, the defending champion, at 50-1. Ostapenko at 50-1. Kasatkina at 65-1. Haddad Maia at 65-1. Kalinskaya at 65-1. Paolini 65-1. Boulder 65-1. Fernandez 65-1. Azarenka 80-1. You have Sakari at 80-1. You have Schneider at 80-1. Svitolina at 80-1. I can keep going, but I think I kind of wrapped it up there. Now, I am going to mention one player whose odds are absolutely insane. That is actually offshore. I'll mention where I got that too. But for the sake of the outrights, I'm going to skip Sabalenka. You might be wondering, why would you do that? Sabalenka is the favorite for a reason. She is very solid on grass, 2-time semifinalist, a lot of firepower. I get it. I know how good she is on grass. The problem I have is more just based on Sabalenka's mental toughness. And yes, I know she won the Australian Open, and she was great. The issue is for most of her career, she just seems to not really come through in big matches. And I know that she has been able to win a Grand Slam or two. I'm aware of it. But I do think at this price, at plus 320, I need more. She's never made a final here in Wimbledon. She's never won a Wimbledon title, obviously. I think 320 is too cheap. And I think looking at her quarter, it's not exactly that great, at least in terms of an easy path for her. Vekic has given her problems. That's a potential second-round matchup. I think Zhang could give her some problems. But I think when you're looking at Sabalenka, I feel like there's an area of frustration that I have with her, which is that it feels like she just has these slip-ups all the time, kind of similar to what I said about Rybakina, but not as extreme as Rybakina, where I just want to see Sabalenka be a bit more consistent and a bit more, I'd say, neutral emotionally. It feels like she has a lot of emotional swings when things go poorly and things kind of snowball. We saw her choke badly in the matchup against Mukova in the French Open last year. You get what I'm trying to say? I think Sabalenka's price is too cheap for a player that's never won in Wimbledon before. So I'm going to pass on Sabalenka. I thought the odds were not big enough, so I'm going to go with somebody else. However, I am going to go with somebody who has never made a Wimbledon semi. It's going to be Swiatek at 420. 420, I think 4-1 is going to be my cutoff range of where I would not take anybody below it, but above it, I would definitely consider. Swiatek's quarter, I think, is actually not that bad. I mentioned before that I'm taking her by herself in the quarter. Vondrousova, I know that she made the dream run last year, but Swiatek's owned her in their career, so I'm not really scared of her. Collins is terrible on grass. Ostapenko's a head case. Ostapenko's done very well in the head-to-head against Swiatek, but I don't trust Ostapenko, especially based on recent form, to make a deep run in this event. I thought Maya's been bad recently. Kudermetova's been terrible recently. I think Swiatek's got a very good draw. And the argument is Swiatek would face off against Sabalenka in the potential semifinal matchup. And even though it is on grass, a preferred surface for Sabalenka, Swiatek's done very well against her in the head-to-head. So I think that I'd rather go Swiatek as opposed to Sabalenka at a better price. So give me Swiatek to get over the hump at the finally win Wimbledon at plus 420 as my main outright. Now, or I should say my main cheap price outright. Now we're going to get to the fun part. So I mentioned Pegula before. I think that she has a serious chance of winning the event. And if you look at her odds, I mentioned that it was around 18-1 on DraftKings. I found 22-1. I believe that was on, I think it was Bet Rivers. But I am going to go Pegula as my second choice, 22-1. Basically a top 5 player in the world. We saw her win the title in Berlin. Very solid grass player. And I think that she has the ability to make a very successful run in this event. We saw her beat Goff. I know Goff is favored to win her quarter. She's one of the favorites to win the event. I know that she's also top 3 in the world. And we saw Pegula beat her in straight sets. So I think that Pegula has value. I think that the second quarter is pretty reasonable. Rybakina, I mentioned before, might be a bit vulnerable. That's kind of why BetMGM has her at plus 175 to win the quarter. I think Pegula can beat her. I think Pegula has an actual, I'd say, skill set that translates well to grass, and I think that this price is a bit off. So give me Pegula at 22-1 as my second choice. Third choice, I am going to go with Zhang at 66-1. So I'm not going to go with Sabalenka. I'm going to go with the person in her quarter instead. That Vekic match kind of terrifies me on behalf of Sabalenka. So I think that you're looking at Zhang, who can have a good showing, made a final this year already. She's young, she's talented, and she's pretty consistent as a whole. So I do like her overall game in general. She has not played many grass matches this year, but still beat Osaka in one of the only matches she did play on grass this year. I think it's a good price. I mentioned 50-1 before. I think that on BetMGM, it was 66-1, which is a very good price compared to the rest of the market. So give me Zhang. I even saw like 40-1 in a couple books, but I think 66-1 is a good price. So give me Zhang at 66-1 in this one. Going on to my last pick for the outright. This one is the ultimate out of left field, insane value play that I'm going to have to give out. So I mentioned before that Schneider was off of a title in Bad Homburg, and I mentioned that she was around 80-1 on DraftKings. Can I interest you in 300-1? Because that's what BetOnline is hanging right now on Schneider. Now, I already bet it. The issue was my max bet was $5. So BetOnline is not really letting me try to make generational wealth with this one, but I bet the $5 on it. 300-1, when you can find roughly 80-1 or 120 to 1 on some spots. I think it was FanDuel that at 120 to 1. 300 to 1, yeah, you better believe I'm betting that. What do you have to your mind? Yeah, okay. I'll take roughly 4x the odds of DraftKings. I think that's a great price. Is she going to win the event? Maybe not. But she's very good on grass. That's all I know. Off a title, she's young, and it does feel like if you're expecting the Cinderella run, it's going to come from a relatively young, I'd say, underrated talent, especially on grass, and I think that she checks those boxes. Now, the matchup against Pliskova in the first round is definitely not ideal because Pliskova is good on grass. However, Schneider's favored in that matchup, so they are already showing some respect by putting her as a favorite against the former Wimbledon finalist. 300 to 1 compared to 80 to 1 on another book? Hell yeah. Give me that at 300 to 1. I don't even care like if she loses relatively early on. That value is worth it in itself, in my opinion. So based on just the market value, that's an insane price. It's a bad price, an objectively bad price by an offshore book. I'll jump on it. Give me 300 to 1. So once again, my picks for the outrights in Wimbledon, I'm going to go with Swiatek at plus 420. I'm going to go with Pegula at 22 to 1. I'm going to go with Zhang at 66 to 1. And I am going to go with Schneider at 300 to 1. That one is offshore on a bet online. So I said before, Wimbledon's usually chaotic for the women's side. So I am only going to go with one player below 20 to 1 odds. And the rest is going to be, as far as I'm concerned, expecting chaos. So that's going to be my 4 picks to win the event. See a question from Helms in the comment section. Helms asking me if I'm from Wisconsin. No, I am from New York. However, I went to college in Wisconsin. So I was in Wisconsin for 4 years. I ended up graduating. And yeah, I'm a Badger. So there you go. So I was living in Wisconsin for a couple of years, but I am from New York and I'm back in New York right now. Anyway, time to get into the lock and dog picks for round 1. But before we continue that, I do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm does have a lot of great options for you if you like player props, because they have really just a lot of great resources that you need in order to get the job done. It's the go-to sports betting tool that transforms complex data into actual insights, empowering bettors with smarter, data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm combines advanced predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easier and more enjoyable. Rhythm's predictive models were born from the brains of MIT data scientists and quantitative retrievers of data to help make you a better bettor by giving you AI-backed betting decisions. Rhythm predictions are also, and projections have been red hot in WNBA and golf. So keep that in mind. They have other sports and not just the NBA. You can still use it even when the main basketball season's over. And they also have the NFL if you want to start doing some projections for the upcoming season. So reminder, claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportscampodcast.com. With them, sportscampodcast.com/RATHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished going through the quarters and the outright picks for Wimbledon. Now it's time to get into the lock and dog picks for the show. Starting off with the lock, I am going to go to a matchup between Boulder and Maria. I believe the 2 matches I'm doing are going to be on Tuesday because I wanted to give everyone extra time to find the show, and I didn't want everyone to sprint for the 6 a.m. start time on Monday. So I'm going to go with Boulder to win in straight sets here at minus 140. She's very good on grass. She has won 7 of her 9 grass matches this season. She won a grass title in Nottingham, and of course she is British, so the home crowd's definitely going to be on her side. Maria, though, has not been in good form on grass. She has lost 3 of her last 4 matches, so I am concerned about the recent form. And Boulder's also 2 in a lifetime against Maria. Faced off on grass before. She won in 3, but the point is Boulder is still undefeated on grass against Maria. I think you're looking at the end of the day at a player who is still very solid and a player who I think is better on the surface by a wide margin. Give me Boulder to win in straight sets at minus 140. Maybe Maria can make 1 set competitive, maybe force a breaker, but I think Boulder's too solid on grass, and I think that she is too comfortable on the surface for Maria to handle. Give me Boulder in straight sets at minus 140 as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go to a matchup between Golubic and Niemeyer. And for this one, I am going to go with the over 2.5 sets at plus 145. I believe that is the both players to win a set market on Caesars at plus 145. So both players have been 3-set marathon people recently, as they've constantly been involved in 3-set marathons. You're looking at Golubic, and 4 of Golubic's last 6 matches have gone to 3 sets. Each of Niemeyer's last 4 matches have gone to 3 sets as well. So you're looking at what should be a very unpredictable matchup, and the odds reflect it because each player is minus 110. on the money line. It is a pure coin flip on who's going to win the match. And with the amount of 3-setters, I see a pretty simple up and down matchup for both players, where you're going to see some moments where Golubic looks good, some moments where you end up seeing Niemeyer look good. I think it balances out. I think you're going to end up seeing a 3-setter, but plus 145 is a great price. I saw over 2.5 sets at like plus 125, and you're going to give me an extra 20 cents. So I'm going to go with the 145 as my dog here, backing recent trends and backing the moneyline pricing to suggest what should be a very competitive and a very long match. So once again, my picks for the first round of Wimbledon on the women's side, the lock's going to be on Boulder in straight sets at minus 140 against Maria, and my dog's going to be on Golubic and Niemeyer over 2.5 sets at plus 145. That's going to wrap it up. A reminder, the next episode will be back on the men's side. Going to do round 2 of Wimbledon. So we're going to do that in about a couple days. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the WNBA show as well. Find me on the MLB show. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.